quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
But maybe to tie it all together and just out of like left field of the ether, Jeremiah, do you want to just give a brief update of like the pictures of or the like
Yeah, we should cover that because, and I don't know if it's if it's exactly the right time to do it immediately since people are now just sort of coming in here.
Sacred geometry, and it's showing the Om symbol, the swastika, and the omega and the alpha, I believe, right? All within the fields that you've gotten, and it ties this all together of these symbols that are higher dimensional geometries of fractal nature energy and how the universe functions and works, and that you have demonstrated that several of these symbols through your physics experiments, right?
Well, I'm not the only one doing it either, right? So like after I showed this to a whole bunch of people, and that entire day, the lead up to that final call and your live stream where you so graciously hosted out of nowhere my request that Bernie, let me get on your channel and preach a bunch of garbage about my crazy idea, right? You were the only one there. I knew I couldn't post it on mine. So I appreciated that tremendously. And I suppose I should add to the Omega discovery the other day, since I did make one mistake. And in catching it, it revealed the other 4 symbols. So I feel like it was a reward almost given to me that I didn't deserve out of nowhere by just being open with everybody and talking about this idea that I could have and maybe was wrong about. But here, I'll go ahead and log on for my phone. Let me mute myself out here so that I don't get the crazy echo ring back.
Right, that's always key. And what I have up in the homunculus spot here, the
wow, some fun symbology. Hey.
Right, the main principles of alchemy. There's the 3 principles: sulfur, salt, and mercury. And I've labeled sulfur yellow, mercury red, and that is the positive and negative, the anode and cathode charges going into the electrolysis reaction, your salt. And in the salt jar, there's always this line in the middle, this exclusion zone that forms between the two.
Right. Wow. Interesting.
So I'll get back into that.
All 3 of them. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Let me go ahead and flip that.
There we go.
In the right mode here.
These are...
Okay, so this is what I showed the other day. I only showed this interaction, and it's this one up here. So here we're looking at the side view of 2 different wires that are crossing at a 45-degree angle, as we're seeing from the top down here. So we're just looking at sort of the end post of these 2 individual conductors. These could be carbon nanotubes. They could be a variety of different conductors as long as they can carry the transit of electrons. And so there's a possibility of interaction between 2 different wires carrying an electron on the outer edge, as in the evanescent field. So we have we have 3 different types of electron states that can flow through a wire. The first state that we have is what we would call a conduction electron. This is not necessarily a free electron, but it's simply the transfer between a perfect balance of electrons and protons inside the atoms of the conductors, where we get jumps from one conductor to the next. And these conduction electrons, they can't do this shape. We have a second type of electron in these conductors called a free electron, which can make this shape, but they won't make it unless they're at the outside edge of the conductor. And in the third state, these free electrons, if they are riding in the evanescent wave on the outside, they get to do something that other electrons can't do inside the conductors. Hence why I say this doesn't happen every single time. This is a rare interaction, but it can be caused to happen if we coordinate the exact interaction angles. So the reason for why is if we take an electron, this circle in the center, and we accelerate it along this vector here, we're going to get something called a geometrically amplified relativistic field, which means that these little red arrows here, these are the relativistic field that we'll detect from the electric potential of the electron as it's moving along this vector arrow, and we're viewing it from either this position or this position. Now, if there's an acceleration, we have a slightly larger electric field in the direction of acceleration versus the direction behind it. But what's really important here is from the side, we can see that the blue arrows are the normal electric field of a stationary electron, but the red ones are what happens when it's moving. And we can see that it appears the electron is a greater strength as viewed from the side in this position if it's moving past that point here. And because of these electric fields, it ends up doing something super weird. So let's go back to our first example here. The other day I showed that there was a double omega, and oh, did I freeze? I guess not. Okay, so the other day I showed that there was a double omega, and I said that in this case we get an omega on the top, this shape here, and an omega on the bottom if one was moving away from us and the other was moving towards us. Well, it turns out that actually in that case they would have to both be moving away from us to make the omega symbol on both sides. But this is where I was wrong. If one is moving away from us, like on here, the top side, this red line, this trace, represents the electron moving away from us. Right, we're at the cross point there where the two wires cross. If the electron is exactly at the bottom side of the wire, it will be repelled away from the extra electric field, that one right there, because the interaction is orthogonal to the direction of motion. And that extra repulsion can cause it to actually take a loop either through the conductor in a very small fashion, just right at the surface, to penetrate the depth and go inside, or to actually take a loop all the way around the outsides. That just happens inside of carbon nanotubes. And on the other side, we can see that the cross section, as we look at it from our angle, produces the alpha. If we look at the cross point between both sides at 45 degrees up and 45 degrees to the side, we see a double infinity. And if we look directly at the top down, we see the swastika. These are the natural symbols of a double sine wave cross path length that these two particles make when they're traveling in the evanescent field. And because of that, we get an unusual interaction. Now, this interaction should allow superconductivity because these will have to accelerate and go almost superluminal. In fact, I believe that they do go superluminal.
Does the blue in that example go behind the tube? Yeah, I see that. Okay. It does.
Yeah, so you can see how the repulsion due to the extra relativistic electric field can cause these types of geometries in these shapes.
So which frequency is this that you're putting in to get these three
DC?
Like DC, and you're getting alpha, omega, the swastika, and the ohm out of this.
Go back and show that again. You're onto something.
Okay.
Yeah, please
no, go ahead and tell me what you want me to see, or what you want to see, and what you want me to show, because I have no problem going into this even deeper.
Back out a bit, yeah. So we see the full spectrum.
Oh, the full.
There we go. Yeah,
there it is. Bingo.
So the alpha, the omega.
So you got the double tubular, and if the alpha omega are going through these tubes, they're going to create a similar resonance to these two ultra shapes that we see above the bottom two shapes. So we got these ultra shapes, which are top down and three-dimensional. And so the alpha omega will create that within the tubular space as a resonance throughout its existence. That's sorry, fucking
it's
brilliant.
Wild, right?
Seriously, that's fucking brilliant. Oh my god.
Oh, and then
right?
One more symbol I need to show too, and this is important too. I mentioned that I had found the epsilon as well, and here it is. So in a conduction between two, and this would only happen in carbon. This would happen in carbon nanotubes predominantly, which, by the way, you could make carbon nanotubes as the Egyptians did by burning hemp. And the hemp rope will produce a natural striation of carbon nanotubes. Well, if you have them cross it on the bottom,
when it burns,
you get an electron jump between the next on the outside, and they will make this little shape, this little double loop-de-loop. In jumping from one orthogonal conductor to the other, they can't just take this straight path like this little 90 degrees bend. They actually have to take this double loop in order for the magnetic field and the spin alignment for both particles to come out at the end. And the funny thing is, when they do come out at the end, in this case, into carbon nanotubes.
Well, I like how you have those going crosswise. Yeah,
right. They come out crosswise,
better
and
shape,
their dipole moments are exactly reversed. So these will form a Cooper pair and act superconductively coming off the carbon.
Wow.
Hence exactly why we found that if we cross two carbon or graphene sheets at an exact angle, that we get superconductive-like properties that were found and not quite understood because the geometry was not yet known. But you could think about the electron run along basically a string, like a bead with a hole through it, and they're going to want to stay along this certain alignment path. Well, it's the fields that control exactly where they go. Right. So Dalza pointed out, yes, this is very much like Walter Russell's diagrams. He's seeing this too, and he's seen the interaction Russell was a genius. Absolutely, he has some of the best elemental diagrams and the breakdowns in terms of how they interact that I've ever seen. And I love the fractal nature of what he's discovered. So I would say that this is a discovery has been known about by the ancients forever, and that's why we've seen these symbols. They may not have,
but these 2 points right
do.
here, where you have the top-down view, but then the 3-dimensional side view, I think that's super key because it shows how it overlaps and it folds within itself, and that's wow, yeah, seriously. Dude.
The part that blew my mind is it's the exact same motion. It's the exact same motion that nothing changes between any of those different diagrams. It's just that we're looking at it from a different angle. That's all that changes. It's just how we look at it, right? Where we're facing. So it's the frame of reference, the observer, and their position in relation to this cross-field interaction is what determines the geometry that we see come out of it. My mind is still melting from it.
Right? Like just from a different angle, different perspective, that from multiple perspectives, multiple angles, you're getting multiple sacred geometric symbols and geometries. It truly is mind-blowing.
Thank you for that. I mean, that was like seriously.
Thank you for hearing me. I am glad that somebody gives a crap about this crazy discovery.
We all do. It's fascinating, and it connects into this theory of everything, right? That so many of us, like in the physics, and connecting essentially the cross between metaphysical and physical, and what the ancients knew, and the real knowledge of the mystery schools, such as these Platonic solids, the harmonic octaves of the spheres, and like the super advanced mathematics, geometric, dimensional knowledge and language that the ancients knew that we're only starting to understand and have come out publicly. For instance, the twister, the Masonic initiation of the 3rd degree of the twister that was in the APEC presentation last month. It's from every angle. It's fascinating stuff, and it's accelerating.
I'm unfamiliar with the twister. Sorry.
I do love the word that it's accelerating. That's the use of the word in both the figurative and the literal sense.
Oh shit!
Right,
Propulsion. Long time no see, man. Oh, what's good, guys? Sorry,
welcome,
you guys
Gunwoo.
told me to hop in. What's up?
Yo, dude, Gunwoo, haven't seen you in a while, man. How
Right?
have you been feeling?
Oh, welcome to the fold.
Yeah, so what's this about?
The fold is a great term for what we're dealing with. The fold, it's a fold, or it's like a shard, it's a fractal within this higher dimension of reality, of the universe, of this metaverse, and that it's connecting all of them. And that, like Jeremiah's demonstrated here, the alpha, the omega, and the swastika, all within DC current.
Now, I do want to point out, too, and this may be important for experimenters to know, that the likelihood that this event will happen in terms of the evanescent wave interaction becomes more and more likely as the impulse speed or the rate change of the current flow rises. And so if you give this Tesla impulses between 2 cross conductors compared to your continuous steady state DC, the likelihood will go up by orders of magnitude that this effect happens, because when you have a fast impulse traveling down a conductor of any material, it's more likely that the electrons will travel around the outside of the wire instead of moving through it, since that's the most efficient way that they can travel due to the fact that they're repelled from each other and following that geometric field amplification due to relativity. So
you're kind of describing the sun. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, back EMF is a great way to do it. Bedini knew that. You've got a bunch of people that have played around with the back EMF. I mean, it's kind of like the thing that all the free energy guys have talked about for all these years is you have to use this extremely fast impulse, because when you do and you have the right field interactions, you get the emergence of this other phenomena that doesn't otherwise take place for the most part.
Yep.
And they were saying that it would create, the possibility of the conductor actually being warm, but yet when you tried to feel close to it, it would be cold and it would be pulling in temperature from the surrounding ambient. That this is where you gain huge extra voltages, where with only a 3-volt input, you may get as much as a 20,000 volt back EMF impulse out of the same winding with only 20 turns. And so we've seen all these kinds of effects before. And they happen the faster that your impulse speed is, the faster that rise time and that fall time is. This is where the stuff seems to emerge out of. And I think it's just because you have this relativistic kind of interaction.
Were we talking about the Phoenix event?
About the what?
The Phoenix event? Or
No.
What's that?
Free.
Solar output.
Gotcha. I mean,
leave
the Phoenix event is somewhere along the lines. I mean, it's still a corona discharge.
Yep, coronal discharge. Yep.
Yeah.
Bring it back into the alchemy, and like you're saying, Hans, that describes the sun. And I was mentioning earlier in Xirtus's first stream about my alchemy experiments when making monoatomic gold, and how the alchemists put gold to the sun, and I noticed it would make this regular white monoatomic gold or gold-colored nano gold during the day while the sun is out, and then as soon as the sun set, it would start making this black nano material instead, and that I figured that out. And to test that, after first noticing when I was making monoatomic silver and how it correlated to the cycle of the moon, and after testing it countless times now, that basically when the sun or the moon is full, it will produce a bunch of monoatomic silver. When the moon is empty, it won't produce any. And even to the point of a full moon right before an eclipse, it produces a whole bunch of it. And then as the eclipse happens, it stops making any at all in the reaction until the eclipse ends, and it goes back to producing a whole ton of it. It's pretty crazy.
So I can talk about the 5 phases of the sun, but wow, you've just described 5 phases of the moon, which is very interesting. Wow. So I've been to Egypt twice, and I've learned a lot about chematology, and so the chemat scenario is very different from Egyptology. Egyptology came out of Greece. The Greeks understood so much of the hieroglyphs, but they didn't.
Right, it's an appropriation of of Egypt.
Oh, big time! Yeah. There's a usurping of knowledge. The word Egypt comes from ho kepta, which was a Greek word that meant the land of Ptah, which Ptah was an ancient Egyptian god that represented life, resurrection, the whole 9 yards. But when they were in Memphis, seeing this placard, it was basically Hepka Ptah, and so it literally means the place where Ptah manifests. So it's a temple. It's like, here, worship Ptah, right? This is where he manifests, or he, she, whatever. Yeah. And so the Greeks kind of got this wrong, and so this became Egyptos. But the original name for Egypt was Kem, the land of the black alluvial soil. The people that lived there, there was a lot of this that ended up in Kem. And so when the Arabs showed up, they realized Kem was the name for a lot of this. And so this is where we get the words for alchemy, right? Or
yes, sir. And
chemistry also comes from this. So yeah.
Chemet and alchemit, 100%. That's why in my own
I never put that together.
I spelled my email address ELKHEMIT or IST. Sorry, alchemist.
L. Well, there's a whole different story with L, right? Yeah.
Boy, is there ever two.
One.
Andreas, my buddy.
I feel so bad that I'm so late for Hans Deitrich. This is like way too big of a show to miss. I'm sorry. Good to see you, Mr. Deitrich.
Thank you.
You made it, sir. And
Yeah.
you're here,
Welcome
right?
to the fold.
I love that shirt. That's a great shirt.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything.